I'm Mr. Chantal from the African News Agency. I'm just trying to understand, you said if they applied as a family, and if one gets disqualified, they all get disqualified. So if AJ Gupta didn't get citizenship, how did the rest of them get citizenship? And then also, you spoke about them employing so many people, and today we know that those thousands of people, a lot of them haven't been paid. In hindsight, are you willing to admit that it was perhaps a bad decision?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm saying you say you took into consideration they were listed on the JSE, they employed thousands of people. Today we know a lot of those people haven't been paid in the mines and in the health sector. In hindsight, was that perhaps a bad decision? Are you willing to admit that? Giving them citizenship? Or not? Considering them at least?
Yeah, my question follows on from my colleague Chantal's a little bit. It's the notion, it seems as if the law provides for the notion of collective responsibility or something along those lines. Can the law be applied? So if the main guy AJ is not a South African, but the rest of his family are South Africans, but they are living off the proceeds of alleged crime or corruption, whatever the case may be. Can they be kind of like banned, or can their citizenship be stripped? Does the law make provision for that? The other question relates: do we have an extradition treaty with India? If he is an Indian citizen, but he is, let's say, he's running away from a warrant of arrest in South Africa, does the power not lay with you, Minister, or with the department, to declare Mr. Gupta as an undesirable person, like that American pastor wanted to come here? So he wanted to spew hate speech, but this guy is here for, his tentacles along and all of those things. Is it not possible for you to declare him as an undesirable person, and should he arrive here, he will be banned or arrested or something like that? How does it work?
Okay. Minister Lester from ANC, you're probably going to ask me to ask the ANC Secretariat this, but from what I understand, the brothers Atul and AJ are members of the ANC's Saxonwold 117 branch. The ANC Constitution says that South African citizens are allowed membership of the ANC, but as you just described, they are not citizens, they are naturalized citizens. This could be construed as fraud. If the ANC does lay a complaint or lay a charge with the police, could their permanent residency on that basis be revoked?
Okay, we'll take those rounds and then we'll come back for another round as well.
I would like the DG to deal with some of the questions, because obviously he would have been here when some of the issues arose. I was still on a sabbatical at finance.
Yes, no, thanks, Minister. Let's start again on this question of how AJ is part of it. We remember as a family, they were granted this naturalization as a family. Our record shows that, remember I said, granting is not the same that you actually have. At a point of now relinquishing their citizenship, it's only him who did not do that. So why would the other family members not be given that? So they have to, because they have complied with everything. It's their choice. Remember, South Africa is a constitutional state, and it does not, the constitution, it always uses the word all. So as an individual, I've got my right as a person. I am married, but you can't take my right and start that by my wife and all that. No, my rights are my rights. So those 4 people have the right to choose. Them, they want to be South Africans, they are. AJ is not a South African because he did not want to comply with our law, so that's what it means. Let's come to this thing now of a staff, and say staff is like this. How many companies in South Africa have gone under? And people have lost their jobs. Would you say now DTI or whoever gave that license should not have done that in the anticipation that company will fall. It's not. So let's not ask something which we know practically does not work like that. We get reports of how many businesses have closed on agricultural sector, on the mining sector, on everything, even on the shops here in the hospitality industry. They closed down. Would you say now, municipality, you should not have issued that license to that business because it would have closed? So those companies at that time, they were appointing people, and people were getting salaries out of that. They've built something for themselves, and then the company has gone down for whatever reason it is. So I don't think we can link the two and say, now because they were appointing those people then, and now they're no longer there, therefore we should not have given them citizenship. But at the same time, can we repeat this? There is no citizenship which has been given to AJ. That son and that wife and whatever, they are not the owners of this thing which we are talking about. If I can go to those young boys and say, hey, your father, are we doing what we are saying now, that the sins of my father must go to the sons? I don't think that is a fair thing, really. So I think we must always go back to this thing. No citizenship has been granted to AJ. Not there. So whether what they've done, there's nothing which the other family have done. You are talking, which I think I've explained again, this thing of a collective responsibility, that South African Constitution does not deal with that. It deals with people. If I've done my sins, I will deal with them, but leave my son and my mother, who is 80 years old and all that, can't take punishment for what I've done. And then in terms of the extradition, you remember, Home Affairs, we've got our own responsibility, others are not ours. The extradition treaties are dealt with by the Department of Correctional Services together with the Department of International Relations. If they've signed, there is an extradition orders, that will be dealt with it at the time where it is proven that there's some things which have been done and all that. I think the minister get the other one, I don't want to get into it.
The issue of Mr. Ajay being declared to be on the run, and therefore what steps will we as the Department of Home Affairs take in that regard? I think that too depends on what on requests from the Hawks and the NPA. If they come to us to say we are looking for this guy, he is on the run, please do assist to locate him, and if you can't, should he present himself at any port of entry in the country, we will be obliged to hand him over to the police. You see, we can't declare you undesirable until there has been a necessary communication from the relevant other law enforcement agencies. But also, if you are being wanted in the country, we wouldn't want to jump the gun, declare you undesirable so that you don't come back. We would surely like you to come back so that you can face charges. We will only tell you when you are here and we are handing you over that, by the way, when all of this is done, once you are convicted, we will then revoke the following documents from you, and after that we will declare you as an undesirable person. With regard to the ANC, I think the ANC has to answer. I don't know whether they are members of the ANC, whether they still are members of the ANC. And I think, you know, Lester, as you were correctly saying, the ANC has to provide a response to this. But insofar as we at Home Affairs are concerned, the two gentlemen are not South African citizens.
So, Mr. The other thing we didn't add on that issue, remember the law, if you are a permanent resident holder, the right which you do not have is the right to vote. Other rights, also the right to have a passport, but any other right you have it. The only right you do not have is the right to vote. For us as Home Affairs, what will guide against is to make sure that when that person goes to the IEC, he can't appear on the voters roll, because that ID number differentiate between when you are a permanent resident holder and when you are a South African. So that's where we come in.
Yes.
Mr. Kenny, sorry, can you just to clarify the group of 5? I know you're stressing AJ and Gupta do not have South African citizenship. Can you just clarify the other members of the family? I know you said you cannot connect. Do they have passports?
Which are these 4?
Yes.
The 4, they've got the passport. But the AJ and other family members, they don't have a South African passport, but they are not citizens.
Could I follow up on this? Do they have passports? Is it a normal standard issue passport, or is it, or do they have some form of special passport which one can apply for?
Let's take a few questions and then answer them.
I'm Mr. Kolbekiora from Bloomberg. In this whole application process, including with you, your staff, or the DG staff, had any meetings with the Gupta family to interview them in any way? If so, would you be prepared to release minutes of those meetings?
Thank you. There was a hand.
Yeah, just to follow up on the, are you saying that the Hawks have not requested your help in tracking Mr. Gupta, saying that you're responsible for the ports of entry?
Okay, let's take those two. DG, I think you can answer that. The question about the Hawks, whether they have submitted any requests, and as well as from a technical point of view, because I know for a fact that neither the minister nor the staff nor the DG met with members of the Gupta family to discuss with them their application. But the DG can then clarify what happens when the committee is constituted to consider the appeal.
No, thanks, Mr. Minister. Exactly. Colleagues will remember this question was asked in June. How did we respond to it? I said, I don't manage my staff during the night. I don't manage them at any other time. I can respond to that question. And I answered, I've never met with the Gupta families. The colleagues who were there, at them, they responded and say so. So, as a department, we do not meet with them. There is no, we don't have a process where the family goes and present themselves in the system, so we don't. But what I cannot stand here and say, Mr. So-and-so and Miss So-and-so in Home Affairs never go to the Guptas, and then tomorrow you get it and then say, hey, DG, you lied. I cannot. But our process did not have people who comes to us, but we write to them. There were correspondence, as we said, they submitted this, they submitted that. That's all what we dealt with it. That's all what we've done.
Just a quick follow-through. So in the whole citizenship process for anybody, there's no interview process that goes on?
No, we don't. No, we use the paper.
We use the papers. When a person appeals to the department against the decision and probably send that appeal to the minister or to the DG, we don't look at the letter of appeal ourselves. We forward it to the relevant unit in the department, which will forward it further to a relevant committee. They look at the law, they look at the documents submitted, and obviously if there is any additional information required, the committee, the panel which has been set up, is not going to write back to the minister and say, Minister, these people who had appealed to you, or this applicant who had appealed to you, we need the following further or additional documents from them in order to support their application. They don't do that. The communication is handled between the applicant and the panel, so that the accounting officer and the executive authority are not involved in the process. The process will only come back to the DG once it has been finalized by the panel, and now they are making their recommendations to the DG, And should it need to be further made to the minister, and in this case, it will only be matters surrounding naturalization, because the minister, as the executive authority, has the ultimate power to approve the naturalization of an applicant and to inform the applicant that your application has been successful. What we decided to do around 2016 is to conduct naturalization ceremonies in order to make the entire process transparent and public. Because prior to that, it had always been a private a process clouded in secrecy. You get your naturalization, you make no oath of allegiance to the constitution, the flag, and the legislation of South Africa, and the person simply takes away their naturalization certificate and they go to apply for documents. But we've made it public in order, among others, to end the secrecy surrounding it and to introduce an element of accountability in how we handle matters of naturalization of individuals, because ultimately we should be able as the department to provide answers when we are being asked about how did a person or these people obtain documents. I think in the past there have been cases where certain individuals would have obtained South African citizenship in ways that are inexplicable, and so we've wanted to try and deal with those so that there is greater transparency and accountability in the process.
Thanks. In terms of the passports, Home Affairs is responsible to issue what we call the ordinary passport to the citizens. Once now you need another level of a passport, which is an official, it means now you must be a government employee. Then with that, if you are working for Department of Agriculture, it's the Department of Agriculture who will issue you with that letter, and then when we apply, then we'll give you an official. Diplomatic is not even with Home Affairs. If you want a diplomatic passport, you go to DICO. DICO will come to us and decide, say, no, we just print that passport. So what we have issued is an ordinary passport of the 4 citizens. No official, no diplomatic. With the Hawks, Home Affairs, as you might know by now, we are the member of the security cluster. So when investigations and operations are happening, Home Affairs is at the center of the security architecture of the state. So we're working together in all those issues. So Home Affairs is part of that team. I won't get him to say what was asked and all that, but we're a part of that team as a Department of Home Affairs. We're no longer an administrative department.
So we'll take one more round of allow Lester to go outside.
I need to go and vote.
Good day, sir. Let me just see if I understand. So at the time of the applications and everything, the department was under the impression that you were working with people and a family of good standing in South Africa. And so all of that was all done according to the law, so that was all good and well. And then all of these revelations then come out about, the corruption and all. Knowing what you know now about the family, is there anything that the department can do? Are you going to revoke, for instance, whatever permanent residency that, to Mr. Atu or Mr. AJ? And we understand also that you can't really do anything towards the family because, you can't let the son take the sins of the father. But how's that going to work in terms of their relationship? Because their children are naturalized South Africans, but the father is not. Will we have access to their children? How does that process work going forward?
In a ministerial question, the Minister Mkhize mentioned that the Guptas received citizenship. Was she at fault by not clarifying that she was speaking as the Gupta family and not referring to individuals like Ajay and Atul, because that is what the clarification that the Minister now is giving, that while members of the broader family received, Atul and Ajay does not have. And was the previous Minister at fault not clarifying that at that point?
Members of the AJ family.
Okay. You know, the question whether sorry, Petro. You know, we are home affairs here. Change a lot. No. You know, knowing what we know now is still not sufficient for us to revoke the permanent residence permit of the two gentlemen you are asking about, because there has to be due processing in the court. Only once there is a court ruling can we then take additional steps. I think, as I indicated, we followed the same process with Mr. Janus Walus, Radovan Kresha. We followed the same process. Once there is a court ruling, and thousands of others, by the way, I indicated that almost every month the Minister of Home Affairs revokes temporary residence permits and permanent residence permits and even citizenship in some instances of, well, not every month with regard to citizenship, but with regard to temporary residence permits, almost every month we revoke such permits to various holders of those permits. But we wait until there is a court ruling so that we are not accused of acting arbitrarily. We have had many cases where the department has been accused of arbitrary action, where the department is accused in court of not granting status to people timeously. And so we need to act timeously, but we also need to act to wait for the courts, the rule of law, should a person's, even when they are accused. Once there is still an accusation, we don't know whether you may still be found not guilty and win your case in court, in which case we would be accused of having jumped the gun, prejudiced you, and be found to have acted improperly. So we wait. At times it can be a complete irritation because there could be pressure, or we ourselves may wish that we act speedily in a particular direction, but we need to bid time, wait for court orders before we can take any decision. I think I would like, with regard to the response of Minister Mkhize, to read it before I can indicate, but she would not have intended to mislead Parliament or the public in any way. The facts are as we put it, and what we were saying is not something which appears now for the first time. The DG, in his very first appearance in the Portfolio Committee last year, he provided exactly this breakdown, the detailed breakdown. What does the Immigration Act provide? What does the Citizenship Act provide? What does Civic Services Act provides? And who are the people we are talking about? So that from the outset, we did not talk about the rest of the Gupta family. We confined ourselves to the question which was being asked in relation to the 5 people arising from a leaked, falsified letter that appeared in various newspapers, on the basis of which it was argued that the Gupta family had been favored, when in actual fact, when you consider all the facts that and the manner in which the process was handled, it's quite clear that there was no favoring of the family. The department followed the law to the letter and ensured that none of the prescripts of our law is undermined maliciously by the department itself in collusion with the applicants.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Stay with me, I can take more questions. It's still coming. You'll get a chance to hear it.
A live crossing to Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba's press conference this hour in Cape Town, the tail end there, where he is providing that much needed feedback after the meeting with parliamentary committee members relating to the naturalisation of members of the controversial Gupta family. Well, Minister Gigaba there saying if there was any intention to favour the Guptas, the department would not have asked them to renounce their citizenship. The Director General of Home Affairs there, Mr. Pleni, saying what was approved by the minister was the right to citizenship. They also went on to mention that Ajay Gupta never travelled with a South African passport because he's not a South African citizen and that he did not want to lose his Indian citizenship. Apleni saying the members who applied for naturalisation did not wish to renounce their Indian citizenship and therefore the initial application was rejected. Well, you're watching SABC News. Let's move on now. Property belonging to the Gupta brothers, including their ancestral home, which the SABC's news team visited last week, have been raided and searched by the Income Tax Department of the Indian government. Now, these raids were conducted in their hometown of Saharanpur and started about 10:30 a.m. this morning. The premises where the brothers are building a $76 million temple in the city was also searched. Enquiries are now being made about their company Sahara. Property belonging to their family friend Amar Gupta was also raided. Officials have seized several documents from these properties. The reason for this raid is still unclear so far. Our Indian correspondent, that's Punya, filed this report for us.